afternoon. My name is Master Sergeant Kate Zirkins. I'm here today with Master Sergeant Crystal LaRose. And this 101 micro video is designed to give you a strong foundation in the evaluations program. We will be covering topics like how to determine the appropriate SCOD date, projecting awards, protecting evaluations in MilPDS, and tips to ensure your successful start in MyEval. Now here's Master Sergeant LaRose.
Hello, everyone. Sometimes with dealing with evaluations, you might look like this picture that you see in front of you, where you're scratching your head and going, how do I find that static closeout date? When is the evaluation due? Is this an annual or biannual? Well, hopefully today's training will clarify that a little bit for you and demystify it. So we'll be going through some things to help you out and make it a little bit clearer. So let's look at the feedback schedule. In the ARC component, we have two different statuses. The first one we'll look at is the AGR status. Here you'll see a table that contains the static closeout date for AGRs. It corresponds to the rank for each individual, and again, these are on an annual basis. Their midterm feedback will be at the midpoint between their start date and their static closeout date at that 6-month mark. And again, it depends on the rank for the individual. The drill status members, it's a biennial evaluation period, with again the static closeout dates being based off of the rank for the individual. Their feedback will be on the opposite year that they did not receive an evaluation, so the 1-year mark for the rating period. The only exception to this would be the Chief Master Sergeants in the Air Force Reserve, and they receive annual evaluations. Let's look at an example. Tech Sergeants would receive their feedback on 30 November of odd years, and their evaluation would be on 30 November of even years, their static closeout date. An easy way to remember when static closeout dates are for each rank is according to their pay grade. If they have an odd pay grade, their evaluation closes out on an odd year. If they have an even pay grade, then their static closeout date is on an even year. Another note is that Airman Basic through Airman First Class will receive their feedbacks every 6 months or 180 calendar days until they receive their first evaluation. This is also broke out in Table 2.1 of the Department of Air Force Instruction 362406, as you see here in Table 2.1. It'll show you when the initial feedback is due, the midterm, and again, the end of reporting period for each rank. Status member evaluation period will not exceed 24 months. The exception to this will be initial evaluations, and AGR evaluations will not exceed 12 months. Rank of these evaluations will be the rank that they hold on those closeout dates. So what does this look like in a perfect world? Well, let's use me for an example. I am an AGR, so my evaluation period would be 1 October through 30 September each year. The reason would be annual, and then next year would just start over 1 October through 30 September again, and continue on that cycle. But there are some things that can affect this perfect world scenario, such as promotion or demotion, it being an initial evaluation, or you being a prior service accession. Let's look at some examples. We'll start with the promotion. In the promotions, we want to look at a couple of key elements to help us in determining the static closeout date or the evaluation period for each member. First is we will want to look at what status are they in. Are they a drill status member or are they an AGR? The second, we will want to look at the closeout date of their last evaluation if they have one. Third is what will be their static closeout date for their new rank. So once we have those elements, we're going to follow step 1, and we're going to decide what their new rating period would be based off of those elements. The start date would be the date after their last evaluation, and their closeout date would be that static closeout date of their new rank. Once you have that rating period, you're going to evaluate that rating period against the 24 months for drill status drill status members, or the 12-month for AGR rule. If the new rating period is less than the 24 months or 12 months, then the new rating period calculated in step 1 is what you would use. If it is greater than that 24-month or 12-month period, then a directed by half evaluation is required to close out the day prior to their new date of rank. Let's look at some examples. I have put the chart for the static closeout dates in the top right-hand corner for you to use as we go through the examples. Senior Airman Oliveras, who is a drill status member, gets promoted to Staff Sergeant with a date of rank of 27 February 2021. This is the first element we're going to look at. We're going to look at their status. This member's status is they are a drill status, so they have to have an evaluation period less than 24 months. And we're going to look at their new rank, their last evaluation date, 31 March 2020. Then we will look at their new rank and that static closeout date for their new rank, which I've highlighted here for you. Staff Sergeants close out on 31 January of odd years. Their next static closeout date for that Staff Sergeant rank would be 31 January 2023. If we move their static closeout date to that new Staff Sergeant closeout date, then the rating period would be on April 2020, which is the date after their last evaluation, through that new static closeout date of 31 January 2023. We evaluate that against the 24-month rule for drill status members. This evaluation period is greater than 2 years. Does that work? No, unfortunately it doesn't. So the new evaluation period would be 1 April 2020, which is still the day after their last evaluation, through 26 February 2021. That's the day prior to that date of rank for Staff Sergeant, and the reason would be directed by half with a rank of Senior Airman, because that was their rank on the closeout date of 26 February 2021. Look at another example. Staff Sergeant Marquez, a drill status member, gets promoted to Technical Sergeant with a date of rank of 8 September 2020. First, we want to look at their status. This member is a drill status member, so they are limited to a 24-month rating period. Last evaluation for a Staff Sergeant closed out on 31 January 2019. We look at their new rank and their static closeout date highlighted here. We see that the next static closeout date for Tech Sergeant is 30 November 2020. So if we move their static closeout date to the Tech Sergeant static closeout date, the new rating period would be 1 February 2019, which is the day after their last evaluation, through 30 November 2020, the static closeout date for Technical Sergeant. Next, we will evaluate this and see that it is less than 2 years. Does that work? Yes, it sure does. So the new rating period would then be what we calculated, 1 February 2019 through 30 November 2020, and the reason would be biennial, with the rank being their new rank of Technical Sergeant. Let's look at an AGR example. I've changed the chart in the top right-hand corner for your convenience, for you to use and follow along as we go through this example. Sergeant Manila is an AGR and was promoted to Master Sergeant with a date of rank of 13 October 2021. The first thing we're looking at is their status. They are an AGR, so that limits us to a 12-month rating period. The last evaluation as an AGR, Technical Sergeant, would have closed out on 30 November 2020. When we look at their new rank and that static closeout date, yet the next static closeout date for Master Sergeant is 30 September 2022. Using this, new rating period would be 1 December 2020, which is again the day after their last evaluation closed out, through 30 September 2022, the new static closeout date for Master Sergeant. If we move their static closeout date, the new rating period would be 1 December 2020, which is the date after their last evaluation closed out, through 30 September 2022, the new static closeout date for Master Sergeant. We evaluate this, and we see that the rating period would be greater than 1 year. Does this work? No, unfortunately it doesn't. So this will cause us to project a directed by half evaluation, with the start date being 1 December 2020 through 12 October 2021. Where did we get that date from? It's a day prior to their date of rank. Again, the reason will be directed by half, and the rank will be technical sergeant, the rank they were on the closeout date of 12 October 2021. In this example, Master Sergeant Zhao is an AGR and was promoted to Senior Master Sergeant with a date of rank of 1 December 2021. Status was AGR, again limiting us to 12 months as the rating period. His last evaluation closed out with a date of 30 September 2021. Look at his new rank. That static closeout date would be for Senior Master Sergeant, 31 July 2022. Move that static closeout date. The new rating period would be 1 October 2021 through 31 July 2022. We evaluate this to see if it meets the criteria. The evaluation period is less than 1 year for our AGR. Does that work? Absolutely. So the new rating period would be 1 October 2021 through 31 July 2022. The reason would be annual, and the rank would be Senior Master Sergeant. Let's look at one of the other things that we said could change our static closeout date and our rating periods from that perfect world. In this example, we'll talk about an initial evaluation, one of those for an airman who recently got promoted to Senior Airman. For those evaluations, they close out after the member is promoted to E4. It only applies to airmen that initially joined the Air Force, not transfers from other branches. Initial evaluation will exceed that 24-month or 12-month evaluation period timeline. The start date for these evaluations will be the date initially entered uniform service. The closeout will be the next Senior Airman static closeout date after promotion to Senior Airman. Using these tools, let's evaluate A1C Hoblin. A member is a drill status member that initially enlisted on 3 March 2019 and gets promoted to Senior Airman on 8 September 2022. Looking at that again, the start date would be the date they initially entered uniform service. Closeout date would be the next static closeout date for Senior Airman after they were promoted to Senior Airman. Their rating period will be then 3 March 2019, which is the day they enlisted, through 31 March 2023, with the reason being initial. Again, this will exceed that 2-year evaluation period, and initials are the only exception for that. Now let's look at our prior service members. Prior service members can come from a couple of different sources. Maybe they're Air Force to Air Force. Maybe they came to us from another branch of service. It could have been a civilian because they had a break in the service from the Air Force, or a civilian with a break in service from another branch. Each one of those scenarios can come in with a different outcome. We won't be covering letters of evaluation today, but information for processing Air Force Form 77s are located at Department of Air Force Instruction 362406. Specifically, Table 5.1, Note 5 will give you an explanation on how to process them for gaps in record, missing evaluations, and breaks in service. I'll keep that note at the bottom for you so you can reference that as you go along if you need to, and we will put in here when they should be processed. Tech Sergeant Clancy, a drill status member, transferred from another component of the Air Force on 28 March 2020 and received their last evaluation on 30 November 2018. And looking at our key elements, the last evaluation date was 30 November 2018. There was no break in service. Next static closeout date for Technical Sergeant is 30 November 2020. The rating period would then go from the day after their last evaluation, so 1 December 2018, through that static closeout date of 30 November 2020. The reason would be biennial. Again, there are no gaps in the reporting period. In this example, Sergeant Green, a drill status member, transferred from another branch of the military, maybe the Army, to an Air Force component on 30 April 2021. They had no previous Air Force evaluations. Be sure to prepare an Air Force 77 to explain the gap in rating. The start date would be the date they initially entered uniformed service through the day prior to enlistment in the Air Force. Again, the guidance for that is below. Next static closeout date for their rank of Staff Sergeant would be 31 January 2023. So their rating period would go from the day that they enlisted in the Air Force, 30 April 2021, through 31 January 2023, the next static closeout date for their rank, and the reason would be biennial. Staff Sergeant Williamson, in this example, is a drill status member who enlisted after having a break in service from an Air Force component on 20 June 2021. His last evaluation from his prior service closed out on 31 January 2019. We're going to prepare an Air Force 77 to cover the gap, which would go from the day after the last evaluation through the day prior to the new enlistment into the Air Force of 20 June 2021. Next static closeout date for Staff Sergeant is 31 January 2023. Their rating period will be 30 April 2021, day they enlisted, through 31 January 2023, the next static closeout date for Staff Sergeant, and the reason would be biennial. Now that we've talked about static closeout dates, let's turn it over to Sergeant Durkins so she can show you how to project these in MilPDS.
Thank you, Master Sergeant LaRose. Now that we've identified the appropriate SCA dates, it's time to ensure that the dates are projected in MilPDS correctly. On the Oracle page, there is a search feature, Control F, to search for enlisted evaluations, and then go ahead and select enlisted evaluations. Like any other transaction in MilPDS, hit the F11 key to enter any data. Type in the last name first, and then your wildcard, the %sign, and then hit Control F11 to search. Choose the appropriate member, and then select the bottom, Enlisted Evaluations. Again, under the type, you would select Enlisted Evaluations on the top of the screen. Under the details line, it's going to go ahead and project every single evaluation that the member has had. And if you notice, you'll see on those details where those closed out evaluations are. You're going to scroll down and you're going to look for any projected evaluation, if there is one there. Sometimes there is no new projected evaluation. So you would either select the projected or you would create a new line. To create a new line, you would add the plus, you would click on the plus button on the upper left-hand side of the screen. Once you select the green plus button, a blank line will appear. So you will select and hit on the blank line. When you do that, this next screen will populate. Type will always be FDR, and the status will always be projected. There, you can type in the word PROJ, or you can hit the List of Values button and select Projected. The reason would be biennial for DSG, and for an annual, it would be annual for AGR. The only other required information in this projection would be the start date and the close date, which would be the review period that would flow into the MyFSS in MyEval. Sergeant LaRose went through all of the scenarios that would help you determine what the appropriate SCOD date would be. Once you enter the start date and the closeout date, you're going to enter in the rater information. Insert the full social with the dashes for the rater. If you insert the rater's last name in the rater section, it will not flow into MyEval appropriately. Now, the next item that you can update would be the supervisor's last name and the supervisor's first name. This information is not required. However, it would be a lot easier when you go back in at a later date to be able to identify who the rater is by their first name and last name versus having to look up their social. So I always like to add in their last name and their first name in those blocks. You select OK, and congratulations, it's that simple. The eval has just been projected. You would allow 24 hours for that information to flow into MyEval. It is really important that the data that you're entering is accurate. The best way to double check yourself as a CSS or as a program manager in the MPF would be to pull reports. There's multiple systems that you can pull reports from. MilPDS, CRIS, and a MOACR would be just a few to name. My preference is to use MilPDS. The reason being is that using a CRIS report or using a MOACR would only be as accurate as the last time that that the PSM had ran those reports. So if you use MilPDS, you're getting real-time, accurate data. Pull a MilPDS evaluation report. From the Oracle page, you can Control F and search the evaluations folder, or you can navigate while you're in MilPDS to Reports and Retrieval, Folders, and then the Evaluations folder. Click on the white box under the primary category. Select the List of Values button and choose the member's current pass. You will see many different options for creating a report. You can play around and select what would work best for your squadron. I personally like to keep this report as broad as possible because when I export it to an Excel document, I can then filter the information that I need and I have a full report versus, for example, using the tech ID for someone being either a DSG or an AGR member. So once you select the current pass, you can enter the MPF ID. That would give you the whole wing if you had that access at the MPF level, or you can put in the full passcode if you are a CSS. And then you'll click on the Find button. It will then populate all of your members within that specific category that you selected. Select File on the top left of the page, and then Export. If you have over 100 records on your search, the decision block will populate. Select Continue to End. And the report request is complete. You can then filter your Excel document to suit your needs. Some tips for success that I would suggest: if you are quality checking your SCOD dates using these slides and with the information that Sergeant LaRose provided, if you are pulling those reports and addressing any areas with either incorrect SCOD dates or correcting any raters that are incorrect or that are blank and ensuring that the socials are in there with the dashes, if you are any new accession or transfer, if you're ensuring that their evaluations have been projected, and if you're verifying what their SCOD date is after a new promotion, you will ensure a smooth success and smooth data flow into the MyEval system. So by using the information in this video today, you are now ready to begin the process in MyEval. By ensuring the data is accurate prior to working in MyEval, it's going to make activating your feedback in MyEval an even smoother process. Thank you so much for your time.